Weeaboo, does whatever a weeaboo can. Makes a tier list, any size, debunks haters just like flies. Look out, here comes Weeaboo Warrior. In celebration of the new Spider-Man movie, which combined all of the live-action Spider-Man cinematic universes into one, as well as my Christmas gift to you, I decided to make a live-action Spider-Man strength and power tier list. Now that all of the Spider-Man universes are intertwined with the MCU, I wanted to be careful as not to make this another MCU tier list that also has Spider-Man characters in it. So the only characters allowed in this tier list were characters who actively fought in Spider-Man films. The tier list is split into 7 total tiers, which are named similarly to my other MCU tier list, so you can cross-reference the lists if you really want to compare these characters to some of the other characters in the MCU. Before the list starts, I just want to give Ned a shout out to being the MVP when it comes to support, helping Peter defeat the Shocker, basically becoming a wizard and bringing all of the Spider-Men together, and of course being Peter's guy in a chair.
Guy in a chair.
He also committed social suicide to protect his friend.
What are you doing here? There's a dance.
I'm looking at porn.
And that's the same excuse I use when I'm caught power scaling. At the bottom of the human tier, we have Richard and Mary Parker. Together they were able to defeat an armed assassin, with Richard clearly doing the brunt of the work, though they both ended up dying. Both Flash Thompsons are blessed in the gene pool in regards to strength, with the one from The Amazing Spider-Man easily beating up Peter before he got his powers, and the one from the Raimi series being able to dent a locker with one of his punches. Harry Osborn from The Amazing Spider-Man before becoming the Goblin was able to take down 2 Ravencroft guards. At the peak of the human tier is Bonesaw, who was able to toss around normal people like ragdolls and defeated a large line of challengers, until he came up against the Spider-Man, who he actually did surprisingly well against. It doesn't really matter how strong a human gets, a person with a weapon will almost always win, which is why all of these guys are above the savage Bonesaw. Dennis Carradine is a criminal armed with a gun and knife and isn't afraid to use them. Captain Stacy is a trained police officer and accurate with a gun. He helped temporarily hold back Lizard before being gored. The assassin from The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was most likely trained in the art of killing other human beings, and was the reason for Richard and Mary Parker's untimely demise. Jackson Bryce, who liked to refer to himself as the Shocker, was equipped with powerful alien technology that was able to give Spider-Man some trouble. He was replaced by Herman Schultz, who trained with the equipment, and even though Spidey said the previous Shocker was better, by the end of the film Schultz proved himself to be the superior one, beating a surprise Peter with no web shooters into submission, and would have possibly finished him off if Ned didn't save him. At the bottom of the low super soldier tier is Alexei Sitsevich in the Rhino suit. His suit is heavily armored and impervious to bullets, strong enough to smash through walls and throw cars, and is decked out with machine guns and missiles. But it has a lack of mobility compared to the characters above, and the person operating it quite honestly seems to be mentally handicapped. The Amazing Spider-Man's Green Goblin has a suit that gives him enhanced mobility, battlefield injury repair, and the strength to stand up to Spider-Man. His glider gives him great maneuverability and the advantage of flight, and has pumpkin bombs he can throw at his enemies. He was knocked out twice while fighting Spider-Man, and only really stood a chance due to the fact that Peter was trying to save Gwen the entire time. Adrian Toomes in his Vulture suit also has the ability to fly, but he was far more experienced with it, and was a much better match against Spider-Man. He has a powerful alien weapon that disintegrates whatever it hits, and his wings can protect him from bullets. He got the better of Spider-Man in 2 out of 3 of their encounters, but their fight on the ferry was probably the most fair, and Spider-Man was able to disarm him there. Quentin Beck, later known as Mysterio, is a hard character to place, as he's just a normal guy, but he has access to an army of powerful drones with machine guns, flamethrowers, missiles, shockwave blasts, and illusion tech. If his enemies don't know where or who he is, he would be far higher than this. But to make this fair, I'm placing him as if his opponents know who he is, and are close enough to see him. We saw that with his spider sense, Peter could evade the drones and defeat him, and all of the other Peters should be able to do the same. However, you can argue characters like Green Goblin won't be able to do that without a special sense, though he has his glider and long-range weaponry of his own that could blow away Beck before he can do anything. Doc Ock may not have a Spidey sense, but his metallic appendages give him a greater sensing ability than a normal person, and he's been shown to be very aware of his environment on multiple occasions, so I think he has a chance. Lizard received a massive amount of gunfire before and regenerated from it, and has super senses and should be able to smell exactly where Beck is, so he might be able to quickly rush Mysterio before he's completely demolished by the drones. Gliding into the bottom of the high super soldier tier is Norman Osborn's Green Goblin. He was strong enough to give his Spider-Man a good fight, and completely demolished the MCU Spider-Man in their first battle. But when both Spider-Men got serious, he ended up getting his butt kicked. The one thing that leads me to believe that he could be higher is how he was able to chop off one of Doc Ock's metal arms with his glider. However, in most of his fights, his glider ends up getting damaged or he gets separated from it, and in one case it even kills him. I believe all of the characters above him would be able to defeat him in a close quarters battle, though if he keeps his distance and utilizes his pumpkin bombs that are strong enough to vaporize normal humans to the bone, he does have a chance to defeat characters above him. His son is above him as he had a longer time to train, more advanced tech, and did better against a more experienced version of Spider-Man, as well as a powered-up symbiote Spider-Man. He lost both of his encounters with Pete, even though he was going for the kill and Peter was holding back. Almost died in their first fight from a fall Peter would normally be relatively fine after, and got permanently scarred by a pumpkin bomb, while Peter wasn't. Peter Parker from the Marvel Cinematic Universe was clearly above the Green Goblin when serious, and should be above Harry as well considering he was powered up by the same serum. Both Goblins still have a chance if they keep their distance on their gliders, or if Peter isn't willing to kill, but I have a hard time seeing them beat any Spider-Man that's going all out on them. Spider-Man from the Amazing Spider-Man series doesn't have much to compare him with the MCU version, but they both fought the Lizard in No Way Home and the Amazing Spider-Man did a bit better. Both of them were physically overpowered, but the Amazing Spider-Man managed to web the Lizard up, which restrained him for a while. Speaking of the Lizard, he's the next character at the bottom of the low superhero tier. I can already tell this will be a controversial placement, but I think people don't give him enough credit because he isn't that cool of a character and he barely did anything in No Way Home. In the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, he was clearly shown to be physically superior to Peter, had claws that could tear through metal, and a powerful regeneration ability that could grow back limbs and allow him to come back good as new after a barrage of bullets were sent into him. Spider-Man has managed to restrain him with webs on multiple occasions, but it can never hold him for long, and Spider-Man doesn't really have a way to put him down, but the Lizard can easily kill Spider-Man if he can get a hold of him, and he was gonna do it too if Captain Stacy didn't come to the rescue. Dr. Otto Octavius, after gaining his 4 arms that gave him the nickname Dr. Octopus, became strong enough to go head-to-head with his Spider-Man and seemed almost completely even with him. He also gave the MCU Spider-Man and his Iron Spider suit a run for his money, and his tentacles were even strong enough to damage his nanosuit. He has spears that can come out of his arms that can be used to finish off his opponents. His biggest weakness is his body should technically be that of a normal human, making him vulnerable. However, he was able to take a large amount of big hits from Spider-Man, get smashed around and thrown into things and kept fighting, and even took a direct blast from Electro that knocked him through a building. Even if you want to ignore these moments as inconsistencies, his arms can still operate while he's completely unconscious, so if he gets knocked out, it's not that big of a deal. He also has increased perception that would make him extremely difficult to tag, and was able to knock Goblin's razor bats out of the sky to save Strange. The Spider-Man from the Raimi trilogy is right above him, as he doesn't have that same weakness. And while they were extremely close to each other, Doc Ock constantly used cheap tricks like taking hostages, and in their final fight, Peter clearly got the edge over him. He got the better of the Amazing Spider-Man in their initial web shoot-off, and stopped the bloodlusted attack from the MCU Spider-Man. And unlike the other 2 Spider-Men, his body produces its own webs, so he doesn't have to worry about web shooters breaking or running out of web. Another way you can justify him a tier above the MCU Spider-Man is how he consistently got the better of Green Goblin, while the MCU Spider-Man got destroyed in his first encounter with a Goblin who didn't even have all of his equipment. The MCU Spider-Man in his Iron Spider suit is at the top of the tier, as his suit makes him the most durable, has metallic arms of its own, and has instant kill mode if he needs it. Dr. Octopus gave him a good fight, but Peter had to focus on saving people, and ended up restraining the Doctor after his nanotech took over his arms. Moving on to the mid-superhero tier, we have Venom. He has all the same powers as Spider-Man, as well as sharp teeth and claws, and consistently beat the crap out of Spider-Man, who had to resort to using Venom's weakness of sound and a pumpkin bomb to win. If he didn't previously know Venom's weakness, or if there wasn't a pumpkin bomb in the vicinity, he likely wouldn't have won. Not to mention Venom would have already killed him by that point if Harry hadn't sacrificed himself to save his friend. Spider-Man with the symbiote suit is higher, as a superhuman with a symbiote should logically be stronger than a regular human with a symbiote, though Venom does have the teeth and claw advantage. Symbiote Spider-Man was able to give Sandman a much better fight than in his first encounter, and actually won, though he needed to abuse his weakness of water to do so. And he doesn't really have a way to permanently defeat him, which is why Flint Marko the Sandman is right above him. With enough sand he can become extremely large and do massive damage to Spider-Man, though he's a bit slow in this form. Besides water, the only thing that really seemed to damage him is when Harry hit him with some of his weaponry, which makes sense as he was probably damaging the sand particles themselves. He was able to temporarily restrain Electro, but he admitted he couldn't do it for long, which is why Electro is in the tier above him. His electrical attacks are devastatingly fast and powerful, and he was beating the brakes off Spider-Man in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it was confirmed he was far more powerful than him in an outside source, not that it really needed to be stated. Then he gets a power-up in No Way Home when he gets a hold of an arc reactor. And it's confirmed by the Amazing Spider-Man that this is the strongest he's ever seen him. He was able to beat back all 3 Spider-Men at once, and was only defeated because Doc Ock surprise attacked him. Sipping coffee at the top of the list is Doctor Strange. He captured the Lizard off-screen, and gave Peter the ability to capture Sandman and Electro. He put Norman in a cell with his magic, though he wasn't ready for that and wasn't fighting back. But at the speed he did it, I'm not sure he could if he wanted to. He can knock people's souls out of their body, can take them into the mirror dimension where he basically controls reality, or just leave them there. He did end up getting trapped there himself by Peter, but he wasn't focused on Peter when it happened and was really defeated by Math, which is a monster that has defeated us all at one point or another. Strange's physical strength and durability is a weak point, and he might have been killed by Goblin if Doc Ock didn't save him. The speed and power of Electro's attacks could pose a real threat to him, and scaling-wise Electro did far better against Spider-Man, so I think a case could be made for him winning, which is why he's in the same tier. But Strange overall has shown greater power and abilities, and I think he would find a way to win more times than not. That's the end of the list. Before you leave, I have some words of wisdom. With a great number of subscribers comes great responsibility. So if you want me to become more responsible and put out more videos consistently, subscribe to my channel!